Alright, gonna start my second video here on the lightweight independent power system. I'm gonna go through all the preventative maintenance and cleaning it up and stuff, and a couple little extras I did with it. So one thing I realized after editing the first video I made with the key, how I was talking about there's run and stop, and I didn't know what the difference was. The only real difference with the run is it's feeding power to that low oil circuit. So you can see the light illuminates over here. That's your warning light for if you have low oil pressure. Now, I don't know if only the light lights up and it doesn't shut it down. Anyway, at least it's got some sort of warning, and I figured that out. Got a set of these rubber feet off of Amazon. They actually fit perfectly up inside the channel right here. So I'm going to drill holes and mount them, and it's just enough to keep it from shaking like crazy on the ground and stuff like that. So I didn't realize it, putting this boot under this part of the frame. This motor mount is in the way, and also it doesn't quite fit with the screws that are there, so I'm probably gonna have to get some of the rubber off one of the sides so it'll fit in there, and then use a tech screw or something. Ended up getting it on there. What I did is there was just enough room to drill and tap, so did that. Alright, I got the air box off. You can see how nasty this thing is. On the Steel Soldiers forum, somebody said this Wix filter, I went down to O'Reilly's, they had it for me the next day, WA10168. It's a little tight side to side, and there's a tad bit of a gap, but it's still going to cover enough to seal. So I'll go put that on. There, it actually seals up real tight on there. Cool. On the negative side of the battery, I added a isolator, so that way if it's being stored, by chance there's not some like phantom thing that draws down the battery. Alright, tools you need for the oil change. This is a 14mm, that's for the oil drain plug. 10mm for taking off the oil filter if you're going to do that. Oil filter got a little stuck, so I used some channel lock. Flashlight to inspect inside the crankcase while I have it off. And then oil. I used Rotella 15 weight 40 because I use it in everything. I got diesel, and then something to catch the oil in. Alright, so I got it set up here just to make it easier to work on. I'm going to use the oil drain on this side, and I got it hanging off the side in a catch pan. I'm going to take the dipstick out so it's got something to breathe, and drain it. The old oil filter screen is on the left and the new one's on the right, and you can see it's a little bit different. I went to just go put it in there and it didn't quite want to make it. I pulled the O-ring off that was on the engine block and rested it to the inside of the new filter, and it will go in there. It's a little bit more tricky lining up the nipple, but it will go all the way in. I don't know what the exact capacity is, but full is right up to the edge of the threads. So I just filled it up to that point. And it'll probably get sucked into where the oil filter and stuff is a little bit. These 10mm, they just get a little bit past snug. I didn't look up like what the inch pounds is, but it's not very tight. This is plastic, it'll end up destroying it. It's just enough so that that O-ring back there seals up. So looking at the old oil filter, you can see there's a little bit of stuff built up on it, but it's not a whole lot, considering this is probably the original one from like 20 years ago. Probably could have just cleaned it and reused it. So one thing I did is I put this on here too. It's a wireless hour meter. It's interesting, it works off of vibration. It has 3 separate settings. You can lock it so that way if it's like in the bed of your truck, it won't sense the vibration and think that's what it is. It is pretty cool. I'll show you how it works real quick. I'll start it up and you'll see the hour meter start to go. Okay, for the fuel filter change, mostly pliers. You gotta undo little clamps for the fuel lines, 10 millimeter. You can either use it on a ratchet or the screwdriver's probably gonna be fine. None of this stuff's very tight. If you end up needing to bleed fuel at the injection pump, 14 millimeter. I have it both in the socket and the wrench. I tried to prevent a lot of the fuel from draining out of the lines with this, but it didn't end up working. Might not hurt to have it around though. And here's your fuel filter part number, 243-62101-20. This is the Robin genuine fuel filter part. This was like a new old stock. See, it's got Japanese writing and stuff on it, but there's some aftermarket options, I think, and Steel Soldiers said that the aftermarket ones you needed to modify one of the mounting holes a little bit, otherwise it worked. This is fairly simple, but I'll document it. You have a 10 millimeter here and here. That will free up the fuel filter, and then up here these are just the squeeze clamp types. You have, this is your outlet, and these are two inlets. This is the return from the injectors, and this is from your tank. You need to shut off the valve, tank shut off that you can see up in there. Reach from the other side, shut that off, and then what I'm going to do is on the line going up to the injection pump, I'm going to try to put a vice grip on here and keep the fuel from draining out so I can avoid priming. The system could be kind of a pain in the ass on these. If you don't want to do that, where you prime it is this little like banjo fitting right here. You loosen that nut. This will come off. You probably just loosen it and hopefully the air bleeds out and you get all your bubbles. Sorry, I didn't realize it wasn't in focus. Get all the bubbles and stuff out and then tighten it up. And I have obviously a catch pan under there. And once you do all the shutoffs and everything, there's also a 10 millimeter nut that's really hard to see underneath for draining it all out. That's why I got the catch pan there. I hooked everything up, and at that point, what you would have done is opened up the drain at the bottom of the filter, the valve under the tank to let it flow in and flow through. I forgot I got all that old diesel, so I want to drain it out. Took it off, and I'm gonna drain that crappy fuel out. And you can look at the color of it. I mean, it looks brown, and it smells terrible. I knew the fuel wasn't bad, but it's kind of good to know that this thing will eat up even bad fuel. I expect it to run much better. This is what I originally drained out of the fuel filter. You can see it was brown. And these two jugs. Fuel looks black. You can see a little tint of red up here. That was old fuel that I also had. I used these to like catch old diesel, and it kind of came up to the top. The fuel was nasty. And I had to blow air a few times up into this line while it was draining to clear the crud that was built up. Spent quite a bit of time just kind of rinsing it, and it's relatively clean inside the tank. I'm happy with it, so I'm going to go through the procedure of draining it, opening it, letting this all fill up, and then we'll start her up. Alright, now that fuel filter's changed, this is open, tighten down my battery isolator, fuel cap's on, run. Might need to crank it a little bit. Okay, it's probably just some air. Alright, I'm going to have to try to purge from that spot. 14 millimeter on the banjo fitting. See fuel seeping, I don't see any air. Alright, we'll try to start again. leveled itself out and purged the air, so I'm going to run it for a while under load. Alright, so I ran it for, let's say, 20 minutes under load. Ran perfectly fine, just loud. Wasn't stuttering like it was before, or shaking. So definitely the new fuel, new filters and everything helped. Fresh oil. And then the last thing I did, as you can see, I have some red and black wire. I ran that along over to the 12 volt charger, and I just ran it for another minute and measured, and I was getting about like 13.8 volts, which in the technical order says that means that the charger is working, which is good. I was getting about 12.6 volts on the battery because it hadn't been charged and I've been starting it. So this thing is pretty much finished and just ready to be used. The only last project that I want to do is fabricate a lifting eye to go across the top, so it can just be picked up much easier with like a crane or a tractor. It's going to wrap up this video, and once I use it for a while, I'll maybe make a third one just following up.